Hi there. I'm going to take a chance in this 2-second moment to try and record my birth story for my second. My husband and son are playing outside in the pool, a little kiddie pool, and then my daughter is trying to fall asleep on her own in a room. Don't worry, I'm listening. So, if you guys don't know, I tried to have a home birth with my first, and it ended up turning into a hospital transfer just because of maternal exhaustion and my son's heart rate not recovering well after contractions. I was in labor for a combined 75 hours. I ended up on an epidural and Pitocin at the hospital and pushed for almost 5 of those hours, and then proceeded to have a medical issue due to incorrect stitching by a doctor that needed to be fixed via a revision surgery, postpartum. So it was just a lot, and that pregnancy was also really, really hard. So my first go around just overall was hard. There was a lot to it that was really tough, and I was really hopeful that this time could be different. So going into trying to get pregnant, I was focused a lot on nutrition, and that made a huge difference, I think, because my early months of pregnancy were a lot more tolerable. Still had 24/7 nausea, but it wasn't quite as intense, and I didn't even throw up for the second pregnancy somehow. And overall, I just really enjoyed my second pregnancy a lot more, and going into birth, I was optimistic that this time I should be able to have that home birth that I've been dreaming of. The reason I want a home birth or wanted to experience that was because in general I am quite non-intervention or low intervention when it comes to my health. I tend to avoid going to the hospital or to doctors if at all possible, and using alternative methods for things. I'm a wait and see kind of gal when it comes to illness and all that. So it aligns with my values to try an unmedicated home birth with, of course, birth professionals there, midwives, but I don't love the way the mainstream system does things like pregnancy and birth. I think that there's a lot of possible issues that come from that approach, and so I really wanted to try this, and I was able to do so. Now I feel like when people describe home birth and unmedicated birth, they describe it like this incredible experience, and yes, hard, but also beautiful and amazing. And while I can look back and be proud of myself and feel triumphant, I felt that the experience was so extreme that it was traumatic to me. So I did make a Facebook post on this, and I wrote this all out, so those of you who saw that, this is basically repeated that. But I was shocked by how extreme and painful everything was. I was shocked by the sensation of pushing and the fetal ejection reflex that I experienced, and I don't feel that I ever need to do a home birth or an unmedicated birth again, because I'm not sure if my brain can do it. My body sure can, but I don't know if I can handle it. So anyways, all in short, I'm really proud that I did it, but I also will not be using the same euphemisms that other women use, like waves instead of contractions or all of that, because birth is no freaking joke. Like, the fact that I survived that just blows my mind. And I'm very glad I did it, because I would have always wondered, if I was never able to accomplish that, I would have always wished that I could have. But I'm also surprised by how much I'm likely to consider an epidural in the possible next time, which is crazy because I never would have electively gone for that in the past. So I don't know, I just have a renewed respect for all women. Again, anyone who's ever been pregnant or had a child or anything like that. It's just, we go through so much. So anyway, I'm gonna tell you quick my birth story. My first birth being so long, I really hoped that this time it would be much quicker. I was hoping for 24 hours or less. That was not what I got, although according to some people's measurement, I did, but I count all the time that I was in enough pain to not be able to sleep and having enough consistency to consider it similar to early labor. That's what I count. And I went into labor, what felt like labor, around 39 weeks, 4-ish days, I believe, and Started at 11 p.m. and probably around 1 or something, I end up calling my sister and telling her, hey, I'm not calling the midwives yet, but I'm having regular contractions that are increasing in intensity that are like 7 minutes apart, 45 seconds to a minute long. And, I felt they were continuing to get more regular. So I called her. She ended up coming here, but then things were not continuing to progress to a consistent rate. And so we didn't ever end up calling the midwives that night. I was just texting and updating them. And then as the morning started to come, I really felt that I was going to stall, and I started to feel really emotional because in my previous birth, it was too similar feeling, and I was feeling responsible, like, oh, why is it not progressing, And I just really needed to kind of let that out. So I cried a little bit. My husband prayed over me. My sister encouraged me. And I was reminded by my midwives who had said that when labor is here, there's no stopping it, And so I just decided in that moment to submit to the process, even if this happened again. And I felt a weight off my shoulders, and I was able to rest in the fact that God's got this. It's not in my control. And I'm just here along for the ride, and I'm just going to stay strong. And so the morning comes around 11 a.m. I'm really stalled. And all day, we had my son home for the day. I had about a contraction every 30 minutes. My sister obviously went home, and I just kept the midwives updated. They let me know that this is called prodromal labor, where you have kind of a false start or false labor for some time, and then it can happen again. It can happen several times. Some women experience it for weeks. Thankfully for me, it was not weeks, but I was prepared that the next night the same thing could happen, and that's exactly what had happened. My contractions were not quite as close, but they were more painful and increasing in pain. And that day, I believe the midwives came to check on me at some point, and they gave me a cervical check, which I don't usually like, but they did it, and they were feeling that I was quite effaced, but they were unable to tell how dilated, if I was dilated, I was, because I was so thinned out. So anyways, they ended up, just checking on me, giving me suggestions, then going home. And I ended up spending that second night of prodromal just laboring alone, trying to let my husband sleep, and my son was at my parents' again. And I kind of just rested into it. I tried to rest, tried to sleep whenever I could, but the pain was getting bad. But I just had a feeling like this isn't it. So I continued through the night, and again in the morning around 11, I started to stall. And so we took my son home again, and my thought was I'd probably spend another day, just chilling. But what happened is that around 1, I started to pick up again, just a couple hours after stalling, and prodromal tends to come back on a schedule, often associated with sleep hormones at night. And so this was unusual that it was starting up again at 1, and I was starting to feel like, okay, maybe this is real early labor. It didn't feel any different, but it was building in consistency. It was remaining more consistent. So anyway, I labored at home with my son here all day, and he was kind of concerned, like, okay, you okay? And I'm like, I'm okay. Anyways, around 6 p.m. when my husband went to drop my son off again, I just updated the midwives. I was probably like 7-8 minutes apart and minute-long contractions, and they were increasing in pain. So I just kept updating them, and around midnight, my sister came, and around 1 a.m., my midwives came, and it was within a couple hours after they showed up at 3 a.m. that I went into active labor. At that point, it was right when I went into the freshly prepared tub, which my body loves happy hormones when I'm in labor because for some reason they help me progress. I don't know, I have enough of the bad ones, but not enough of the good ones. So the water really helped me to settle, rest, and actually go into active labor. During that time, I started to get really warm, and my sister started to feed me ice, and she was feeding it to me like I was a baby bird, and it was just making me laugh so hard how gentle she was being, like she was feeding her baby or a toddler or something. And we both just had some good belly laughs about it, and that was a highlight for me for sure. Anyways, as the morning progressed, I was progressing well. I started to lose my concept of time, but I didn't know that I was losing it, so I really thought I was just spacing out more and like becoming less consistent, but I didn't think about it. I just kind of kept going. And the midwives were very encouraging, just saying, "You're doing such a great job." And then I got out of the water, and the midwives gave me some things to do to help baby descend because they felt she was maybe hung up on something. And these were extremely excruciating things that were pretty scarring for me, just how painful they were. And one of them was something like this, walking wide steps like this during contractions. And I did that for about an hour, taking a break here and there. And that wasn't scarring, but it was definitely really painful. And then secondly, I was supposed to lift my belly and tilt my pelvis forward during contractions for 10 contractions. And my husband was supposed to help me with this because it probably would have been impossible for me to do alone because of how painful it was. So I ended up doing that, and I just had to stop counting because I was like, I can't think I have to do this 7 more times. I just have to do it until they tell me to stop. And I wanted to cry. I did cry, I think. It was just excruciating, but I was starting to feel the contractions in a different, lower place, and it was definitely doing something good. During that time, they were refreshing the pool, and I went back into the pool right after that crazy marathon, and I quickly went into transition. Transition is when you're kind of more tuned in, and it felt slower, but it really wasn't. It's just that my concept of time was weird. I still felt very present. I never felt like I was in a different land, but I just kind of rested and let myself almost fall asleep between contractions. And they were very painful, clearly, but I was able to really, really rest in between. So I went into transition around something like 9 or 10 a.m. And then I was screaming during the contractions because they hurt so bad, but then the ladies were reminding me, try to make your sound lower, try not to scream, try to lower your voice. And I said, well, I'm not feeling pushy, but should I kind of direct my sound lower and ooh, instead of high? And they said, yeah, if you want to, go ahead. Well, I must have done something because as soon as I started directing my sound lower, it didn't take long before I experienced the most incredibly powerful sensation in my life that was honestly shocking to my body and my mind, and it's called the fetal ejection reflex. So as I'm directing my sound low, my body's kind of registering that, and it's helping baby come down. And the fetal ejection reflex happens often in unmedicated labor, and it basically is your body pushing the baby out, whether you like it or not. And some people say, oh, that's so nice, you don't have to push. Well, it's doing what you physically cannot do because it hurts too much. So it is forcing you to finish the job. And I'm glad it's there, but goodness me, it was scarring. I was so traumatized by that sensation and that experience because I didn't really have any control over it, and it was so intense. So I had my first fetal ejection reflex during a contraction, and I feel like I'm shooting through the water, but I'm looking wild, I'm looking around, and they start coming around the pool like, all right, it's soon, they start gathering around the pool. And then every contraction from that point on, I was having 1 to 2 fetal ejection reflexes during the contraction. And it was the first few, they were just scary, but they weren't extremely, extremely painful. But then baby started descending through the vaginal canal, through the birth canal, and it became so painful. Like, it took so long for me to recover from each contraction. I feel like I looked wild. Like, I just wanted to get out of my own body. Like, I cannot do this. I'm gonna die. It just was so intense. Anyway, they continued. I was feeling her descend into the birth canal, and you feel that burning pain, that ring of fire. And suddenly her head is coming down. I can feel her head, and I was in the final stages. I think my final contraction was really long, and I think I had 4 fetal ejection reflexes during it, back-to-back fetal ejection reflex, and oh gosh, guys, it was so painful. It was so mind-breakingly painful, and I just couldn't do anything about it. But her head was born and her shoulder shortly after, during the same contraction, during the fetal ejection reflex, and she came out and they pulled her up onto my chest. And something that was really sad for me is I really wanted to experience the golden hour, which is where you're just in awe of your baby and these positive hormones rush over you, like kind of when you finish a race and you're just like, oh, I'm done. That's amazing. It's over. I did it. But instead, I was just so traumatized by what my body has experienced. And I also went into after pains immediately. Like, I did not have a break. My body was contracting. It was just painful. And I could hardly focus on my daughter. So I ended up having to hand her away as soon as the cord was cut, once it had drained. I birthed the placenta almost right away. And I was just in a lot of discomfort and pain after that. And I just could not focus on anything but that. So we got me out of the tub, got me on the bed, and still pain. I was taking ibuprofen, trying to relax, and I couldn't fathom trying to latch my baby because latching makes the pains worse. And I was just like, I just stiff, Finally, painkiller sets in, and I try to nurse the baby. That's a whole nother thing. Nursing is so hard, and I currently am a pumping mom, so I tried that, and it was okay. I started to be able to appreciate her and notice her and just like, okay, like I'm done, she's here. Postpartum was really hard, but I was mentally prepared for the hardship of postpartum. I was not mentally prepared for how intense and painful my birth would be. I thought, it can't be that bad, right? Like, I'm just gonna work with my body, and like all these women explain their experience as being so just special and beautiful and amazing and intense and powerful. I can genuinely say that I have no desire to experience that ever again. And while I'm so glad that I did, I 100% understand why women opt for pain management in labor, because yeah, it is just impossible to explain. And yes, it was traumatic for me. So like, I spent a couple weeks after that certain I'd never have another child, period. Like, I'm done. I'm definitely now experiencing some more of the positive hormones. I prayed to God asking for them because I didn't get them naturally. I had to pray for them, and they started flowing. And I was like, okay, I could fathom the possibility of having another child. But for the first 2 weeks, I couldn't. And after Luca, I could immediately. I knew I was going to do it again. Like, it was all worth it. But anyways, I was able to accomplish the goal that I had always dreamed of, and I'm proud of myself, and I wouldn't change that I did it. I don't regret it. But needless to say, it was not some beautiful flowery experience that you hear about. It was not a painless birth. It was not a pleasurable birth that you hear happening. I don't understand how women experience that, but good on them. I mean, I just can't even fathom a birth not being painful, like natural anyways. So yeah, my sister got to cut the cord again. My birth team was absolutely amazing and perfect for my needs as a client. And yeah, I don't know, like overall, I'm really able to look back on it and feel okay, feel good, feel proud. But I don't ever want to forget how painful that was, because I don't want to trick myself into thinking, yeah, you can do unmedicated again. Like, you can choose to do that. Yeah. It's also a little daunting to know that all my future births could very well have prodromal labor. To just know that I will never be totally sure if I'm actually going to go into labor or not right now, or if this is just a false start. That can be really frustrating, but at least if I expect it, it's not so bad. Yeah, birth is crazy. I'm amazed by every woman who ever has done it, who ever will do it, whether with interventions or not. And yeah, I'm just humbled. I'm humbled by the experience. I've been broken down again to be built back up. And so far, this life with 2 under 2, I'm adjusting well. I'm really loving just the family time we have. My husband's off all summer as a teacher, so we're really having a lot of time. My daughter was born on June 2nd at 11:24, I believe, a.m. And she was 7 pounds, all these numbers, 9 ounces, and I believe 20 inches long. So, yeah. All right, well, she's waking up, so I'm going to have to go in there. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, please drop them down below. Questions about unmedicated labor, labor in general, babies, breastfeeding, anything, I'm here for you. So thank you for watching.